The Great War finally reaches its climax as the heroes face off against the terrifying Demon Emperor. And so Glon, the leader of the heroes, unleashes one last mighty attack to put an end to the great evil once and for all. With that, a massive explosion erupts, leaving everything in its wake completely destroyed. Despite their victory against the villain, humanity paid a heavy price for this achievement. We see the wounded heroes looking at Glon with concern in their eyes. The Sage of Light was in critical condition, but their leader refused to give up on her, trying to heal her at all costs with his magic. However, she tells him it's already too late. Merovi then approaches him, explaining that the enemy's final blow wounded her, and she can no longer use her powers. But the MC remains adamant, yelling for everyone to just be quiet and stop talking. Accepting her fate, the sage asks him to stop trying to save her, as there's no hope left for her survival. She says that despite everything, she's happy with this ending, and after saying so, she slowly fades away. After that tragic scene, they all begin to mourn, for they had promised that all 5 of them would return home together after the battle. Suddenly, the hero hears the Demon Emperor's voice in his mind, announcing that this is the end of their magnificent battle. In that moment, his friends are attacked and they discover that whoever slayed the villain would be assimilated by him. This was the true ability of that wretched demon. Glon's body begins to be corrupted, and he realizes he's being overwhelmed by the demon's evil force. The demon's voice echoes, stating that he prefers to call this assimilation his one and only true evolution. With that, the demonification continues, but our hero tries to resist with all his might. The villain reveals that whoever defeats him becomes his new vessel, helping him to extinguish all life. And he adds that of all the bodies, the MC's is the most interesting, being the strongest. Seeing the situation, Merovi desperately screams his friend's name. He then asks the MC to finish him off, as he'd rather have that than become a tool for evil. However, the demon tries to manipulate our hero, telling him not to attack his companion, for it would be a terrible sin. But Merovi begs his friend to hurry, as he can no longer resist the corruption. And so the protagonist points his sword at his friend but hesitates to deliver the final blow. Seeing his hesitation, the knight asks why the sword is shaking and if he's unable to strike. Glon remains frozen, simply unable to attack him. The demon then begins to mock him, saying that resistance is futile because his body has already been assimilated. At that moment, Merovi understands that the hesitation wasn't weakness, but a struggle against the control of that darn demon emperor. Realizing this, the knight decides to do it himself and charges toward Glon's blade. And just like that, the protagonist fulfills Merovi's painful request. In his final moments, Merovi says that only the MC, who is ruthless and deadly, is worthy of that ability. With that, he transfers a skill to the hero that makes him stronger with every life he takes. Upon receiving this new power, Glon manages to regain a little control over his body. Seeing the scene, his friend falls into despair and shouts their leader's name. Then his companions tell him not to let their friend's sacrifice be in vain. With renewed determination, the protagonist prepares to do what must be done. He then fulfills his friend's request and eliminates them one by one without mercy. And with each hero taken down, a mark appears on his face. With the sacrifice of his 3 companions, Glon gains overwhelming power. But despite all his efforts, the demon mocks him, saying that 3 lives were only enough to free his right hand. However, the protagonist replies that to solve the final problem, 1 hand is more than enough. And his solution to the problem is to simply tear off his own arm. Seeing this, the demon emperor screams for him to stop immediately. The corrupted hand then grips the sword, and the furious villain tells him not to test his patience. With the force of the grip, the sword shatters into pieces. Surprising our boy, the legendary holy sword Sula was completely destroyed. At this, the demon boasts that no attack in the world can harm his invincible shell. And amidst all the chaos, the protagonist questions if he really thinks so. The hero then continues, saying that if the sword was capable of destroying him, he could also destroy it, and with that, he shoves his arm into his own chest. Seeing that the young man was holding his own heart in his hand, the demon emperor in desperation orders him to stop. However, our hero is relentless and crushes his own heart. And after this self-sacrifice, the demon in his last moments admits to having underestimated the hero who was born to kill and died killing. Our hero wonders if this is his end and laments that he couldn't save anyone. With a look of sadness and regret, the protagonist accepts his final destiny and says, "What a shame." Then 5 years pass, and at that very same location, on top of a platform, a group of demons is gathered, one of them saying he doesn't know what's going on. Another responds that he was only told to bring 4 humans and 1 demon, as today is the 5th anniversary of the Emperor's passing. The ritual leader then proclaims that this year's memorial will ensure the new generation never forgets the Demon Emperor's sacrifice. With that, he announces the start of the ritual, and the first step is to sacrifice the 4 pure offerings. The demon then finishes off the humans who were tied up. Immediately after, the other demons viciously swarm what's left of the offerings. And after that, the ritual leader declares that now they will honor the Emperor with demon blood. And to everyone's surprise, the demonic offering is our protagonist, tied up and hanging. Slowly, the hero regains consciousness and wonders where he is. He's completely confused, as the last thing he remembers is passing on to the other side. But the monster notices he's awake and tells him to be quiet, calling him scum. Our hero is still weak and disoriented, not understanding anything that's happening. The bug then calls him the weakest demon of all, and Glon is left baffled as to why. And the demon continues, saying that being a sacrifice is the greatest honor he'll ever have in his life. He then launches an attack toward our hero's neck. However, Glon was quick on his feet and dodges the blade. But despite his efforts, the blow hits his arm. Furious, the monster tells the boy to stop squirming, saying he's ruined everything. With that, the hero finally breaks free from the vines that held him. The bug is surprised and wonders if that wasn't on purpose. Then Glon glares at him and asks if the half-breed demon doesn't recognize him. At that moment, the creature breaks into a cold sweat and stammers, unable to answer properly. And upon seeing that terrifying aura, the monster finally recognizes him and screams Glon's name. We then see a flashback to when the green monster was on a warship. Back then, he was just a rookie and was ordered to row in the back. The bug then ran with the other slaves while someone shouted for them to put their backs into it, as the four lords were watching. Suddenly, the enormous demonic fleet is stopped by a single human, and this human was on a small raft, ready to face the entire demon fleet. That man was Glon, the legendary demon-slaying hero. At that, the Demon King appears and orders his entire army to advance on the hero. Glon then draws his sword and prepares for the battle that was about to begin. After the battle, the green monster looks at the carnage and realizes everyone has been defeated. He was the only survivor besides Lord Shu who managed to escape the massacre with his life. The battlefield was in chaos, with 3 powerful demon kings defeated by the lone hero. Even wounded and covered in blood, the protagonist showed no signs of weakness. He stood firm amidst the storm and the destruction he himself had wrought upon that place. And remembering that massacre, the green creature becomes utterly terrified of the young man. But the poor bug doesn't have much time to think, as our hero had ripped its head off. He then realizes he has resurrected, and that his ability has been reset to level 1. Seeing this, the other demons shout to kill him and all charge at him at once. Glon then grabs the bug's blade to use against them. With a single swing, he defeats all the demons that attacked him without any difficulty. And by defeating 9 of them, his ability rises to level 9, but he barely feels a difference. The last remaining monster is terrified upon seeing the young man's overwhelming power. In an act of desperation, the creature starts to flee, but our hero easily strikes it with the blade, pinning the demon to the ground. The creature then screams in desperate pain, begging for the young man to let it go. After the battle, the protagonist approaches the victims' bodies and covers them with a cloth. He kneels for a moment, reflecting on everything that has just happened. Soon after, the hero stands up and tries to use a healing spell he knew, but suddenly, his arm begins to transform and he wonders why his hand looks like that. His hand now looks like a monster's, and the hero is completely shocked by the transformation. He looks at the fallen demons on the ground and still can't believe what's happening. He then collapses to the ground in denial, and he finally understands that he didn't resurrect but reincarnated in the body of a demon. Horrified, the hero covers his face and calls the demon race disgraceful. He continues to lament having been reborn as part of this filthy race that he hates so much. With a cry of fury, he says that their only value is to be killed by his hands. Slowly, the protagonist calms down, but his gaze still burns with a deep hatred. Suddenly, he throws up from the sheer disgust he was feeling. The last living monster screams at the hero, telling him not to be arrogant and that he'll make him suffer. The creature calls him a weak demon, but the young man doesn't care and just reflects on his situation. Seeing this, the monster thinks he's a coward and that a good scare will snap him back to normal. However, in the blink of an eye, the protagonist lunges forward and attacks the creature without hesitation. And with a single blow, he defeats the last demon remaining in that place. With this, he realizes that even in a demon's body, he can continue killing his enemies. So, with a wicked smile, he accepts his fate and wonders what he has to complain about. The hero remembers that 5 years have passed since he departed along with the demon emperor. And so he decides to first find a place to stay and then investigate the current situation. While climbing a cliff, he sees the skull of a giant troll he once faced in the past. And he realizes that the demons have built a fortress inside the creature's skull. Round Mountain was actually the skeleton of the giant monster he had defeated. Next, the young man finds a cave he used as a shelter and realizes his memories are correct. Upon entering, he sees no signs of demonic activity and decides to use the place as a hideout. With that, the protagonist lights a fire to warm himself and rest for a bit. Sitting by the fire, the protagonist is alone with his thoughts in the darkness of the cave. With a serious and pensive look, he reflects on his past and what led him here. To pass the time, the hero begins to carve a small wooden doll with his claws. This reminds him of the happy moments he spent with his former teammates. He also recalls a time when Faye made him a grass skirt to wear. On that day, his friends couldn't contain themselves and burst out laughing at his outfit. And even after all this time, he still remembers every detail. Back in the present, a deep sadness overcomes the young man. He then carefully holds the small wooden statue he made of his companion Faye, and delicately, he places the figurine next to the others he had already finished. In a short time, the protagonist finishes carving all 5 of his teammates. Looking at the figurines, he fondly remembers that distant time. However, upon picking up his own figurine, he is filled with regret. Angry with himself, he crushes the doll in his hand with all his strength. And in an act of contempt, he throws the remains of the figurine into the fire to burn. The flames consume the wooden figurine, symbolizing the end of his former self and the birth of a new being. Our hero then thinks about how many lives have been ruined by demons in these past 5 years. Suddenly, a headache hits him, and he begins to receive the memories of the demonic body. In these memories, he sees that the original owner of this body was constantly bullied by other monsters. The former demon was a servant of Round Mountain and was forced to do manual labor all day long. Seeing the memories, the protagonist is surprised, as demons now practiced agriculture. He also discovers that they had an educational system, with teachers instructing the younger ones. One of the students even complains about too much theory and asks his master for a practical lesson. With this, Glon is shocked to realize that demons now even had schools. He remembers that the monsters were just tools of war, created to kill and destroy everything. But in just 5 years, they had developed a civilization and settled across the entire continent. The young man then blames himself for everything, saying that if he had been stronger in the past, none of this would have happened. So he swears that in this life he will become stronger than ever to fulfill his vow to annihilate them. And thanks to the new memories, he discovers the location of the recruit training camp. Our hero then arrives at Round Mountain's training camp number 2. There, a red demon explains the current state of the continent of Solace to the recruits. The protagonist observes everything attentively and begins to understand the current situation. In these 5 years, the demons have established 5 courts and continue their war against humanity. Next, the instructor changes the subject and starts talking about talent marks. He explains that these marks are innate abilities that all demons are born with. But to use these abilities, both humans and demons consume an internal power. The strength of this power is shown by symbols ranging from 1 to 6 marks. The demon then boasts that he is a 2-mark warrior, and that the rookies are in for a world of hurt. At this, our hero notices that he also has only 1 mark and needs a chance to test it. The instructor reveals that the main milestone is reaching 2 marks, as it awakens one's ultimate technique. Suddenly, the crowd of demons begins to part, making way for someone. A monster then shoves the others aside, shouting for everyone to get out of the way. Then the camp's genius recruit appears, carrying several helmets on his belt like trophies. The rookie approaches our protagonist and insults him, saying that trash like him should be out in the fields. The instructor gets annoyed with the commotion and tells the servant to shut up, announcing the start of practical training. He then explains that in a battle, the power of the mark and the type of talent don't decide the victory alone, and that tactics and adaptability are vital, so he shows a creature for the recruits to find its weak point. Seeing that, the genius rookie smirks at our hero and says that finally something fun is about to happen. The red demon reveals the creature and says it was an ancient creation of the Emperor, but was too dumb. He continues, saying that the Howler demon is strong enough to wipe them out, and the challenge is to find its weakness. However, the protagonist finds all of this a bore and shows no interest in the training. So he decides to leave, as there's nothing useful there, and regrets not being able to eliminate everyone to level up. With his current power, he knows he'd only stir up trouble, but the other demons keep trying to guess. Suddenly, the giant monster's eyes begin to glow with uncontrollable fury. The creature then charges full speed at the terrified recruits. The instructor then tries to hold it back with the chain and yells for it to be quiet. He then boasts that even though the beast is strong, its weak point is in his hands, and it can't do anything. But to everyone's surprise, the Howler demon gives a wicked and terrifying smile. The creature then begins to speak and mocks the instructor's naivety, leaving the red demon shocked. The creature then reveals it had been pretending to be dumb for weeks to carry out its master's task. With absurd strength, the giant monster shatters the chains that held it, completely freeing itself. And with a violent blow, the creature defeats the instructor without any difficulty. Before the students could escape, the creature annihilates them in the blink of an eye. The camp's genius is shocked by the creature's 3-mark strength and decides to flee so as not to waste his secret weapon. But while trying to escape, he ends up bumping into our protagonist. The demon then falls to the ground and furiously asks why our hero is blocking his way. Our hero then cleans the blood off his armor, not giving a darn about that guy. The giant creature notices that the young man is the only one left standing on the battlefield. Seeing that the hero can't escape, the monster charges full speed at him. The blonde demon realizes he has no choice but to use his secret weapon. The creature then attacks the protagonist with everything it has. However, just as it was about to strike him, our protagonist turns to the monster without showing a single shred of fear. The giant creature is terrified upon sensing the aura coming from our hero. It then wonders why this weak demon isn't afraid and if he knows its weakness. But the beast remembers that its 9 relatives died years ago, so it's impossible for him to know them. The demon then starts to advance towards Glon, and so the creature convinces itself that our hero is just bluffing to scare it. However, the protagonist remains still with a firm and imposing posture, and with a cold gaze, the young man threatens him, saying that if he takes one more step, he will die. The giant beast scoffs at him and says it will show its true authority to the young one. At this, the monster uses its primordial power and charges full speed at our hero. However, the protagonist stood his ground, not moving an inch. The creature then advances at high speed, but instead of charging to attack our hero, it chose to flee, deeming it too risky to fight a hidden master. The blonde demon is in shock and asks if the beast really fled from that battle. Without a word, our hero simply extends his hand toward the other recruit. The genius wonders what he wants but thinks he can't get close to a servant like him. The genius can't believe it and suspects it's some kind of trick from the young man. But our hero simply rips a piece of cloth from the demon's clothes. He then uses the piece to wipe the blood from his hand. Furious at the humiliation, the demon curses our hero, calling him a filthy farmer. The other surviving demons approach and ask how he scared off the beast. A green monster pressures him to confess, but Glon says he read a human tactics manual. They are shocked to learn he read a book by Garen and decide to hunt the creature. Our hero then smiles and thinks that those beasts have excellent vision, and they're all going to meet their end. Seeing this, the blonde demon gets annoyed that everyone is taking a servant seriously. His lackeys then show up and ask if he's okay, but the genius hides his fear. He then orders his 5 followers to trail the young man and eliminate him in a humiliating way. With wicked smiles, the 5 demons accept the order and prepare for the attack. Meanwhile, our hero walks alone and the henchmen decide it's time to act. Suddenly, the 5 demons emerge from a mist and completely surround the protagonist. The group's leader shouts for everyone to hurry and not lose sight of him in the mist. One of the henchmen mocks the young man and uses snakes to find him in the mist. The group's leader then orders everyone to split up to find our hero. Suddenly, one of the henchmen screams for help, having been bitten by one of the snakes. With that, the venom spreads rapidly throughout his body, causing terrible pain. And just like that, the henchman simply explodes, releasing all the poisonous gas onto the other demons, who start screaming in pain and cover their eyes. They then realize that the venom in the smoke is very powerful. But amidst all the confusion, the protagonist's silhouette appears in the green mist. Our hero thinks he'll use these 5 monsters to test his new talent mark. With that, he activates his ancient serpent bloodline and uses thermal vision in the darkness. He also discovers he can concentrate power in his arms to create snakes and attack. The remaining demons panic, and our hero likes the flexibility of his new power. The group's leader then transforms his arm into an axe and lets out a furious roar. But our hero maintains a calm and serious expression, unfazed by the situation. The last 2 demons glare at him and say that without the mist he's nothing, and is finished. With that, the red demon begins to concentrate his power, and then he uses his secret technique and starts striking some ridiculous poses. His companion is completely impressed by those moves. Seeing all this, our hero finds it completely ridiculous. Then, with a single arm, the young man utterly humiliates the red demon. Seeing this, the remaining demon is completely terrified and breaks into a cold sweat. Desperate, the monster kneels and begs for his life, but our hero asks for a reason, and the demon says he was just following orders. However, the young man isn't convinced and says that's not enough to spare him. In an act of desperation, the creature offers to lead him to its master's secret cave. Our hero then remembers he needs treasures to evolve his serpent bloodline. With that, the demon guides him to a waterfall and says they're almost there. Arriving there, the henchman points to the waterfall and says the treasure is hidden there. But suddenly, our hero grabs him from behind, leaving the monster completely terrified. And without mercy, he uses him as a shield, as the cave is filled with deadly traps. Our hero then looks at the fallen demon and simply thanks him for the information. With that, he enters the cave and finds a small chest at the bottom of a dark and deep pit. Meanwhile, at the top of Round Mountain, an important report is being delivered. A demon informs his leader that a beast caused havoc but was scared off by a servant. The mysterious woman then smiles and finds the whole situation very interesting. This is Bone Crusher, the fearsome leader of the Round Mountain territory. Back in the cave, our hero picks up the small chest and wonders why that's all there is. But as he opens the chest, a furious voice shouts for him to drop it immediately. Suddenly, the camp's genius appears and snatches the chest from his hands at high speed. The demon charges at our boy. However, Glon easily dodges and strikes the guy's leg. The demon is then shocked by the young man's strength and understands why his henchman failed. Seeing he can't fight head-on in that tight space, he decides he needs to flee. With that, the blonde demon retreats and flies out of the cave to escape our hero. Using his wings, he flies away with a look of fury for having been humiliated. Upon leaving the waterfall, the protagonist realizes the fugitive is another aviary demon. He then exits the cave and thinks for a moment. The young man remembers the hatred he feels for this race of winged demons. With that, he decides he won't let that monster get away under any circumstances. So the hero sprints to chase his enemy. With a deep hatred, he charges forward, saying that this is the race that most deserves to die. Our hero then finally catches up to the miserable wretch and holds him tight. The two then begin to fall toward the ocean. But even in free fall, he continues to attack the genius relentlessly. The winged demon can't react to the blows and takes a serious beating from our guy. However, the demon manages to recover and throws our boy with full force toward the water. The protagonist then manages to land smoothly and prepares to attack the demon again. The fugitive then mocks him, saying he was unlucky to fall into that lake. Suddenly, a strange creature emerges from the water right in front of him. With that, several mysterious creatures surround him from all sides. The creatures then charge and begin to bite our hero's entire body. The winged demon scoffs at him and says he'll enjoy watching him be eaten down to the bone. He reveals that the lake was made from the bile of a powerful demon from the past, but our hero doesn't give up and bites one of the creatures with all his might. Even wounded, he continues to fight with unshakable determination. The young man continues to battle the swarm of creatures without showing any weakness. The protagonist's strength surprises the winged demon, who watches everything from above, but he scoffs, saying it's just farmer's strength and that the bugs are endless. So, our hero decides to use his serpent bloodline to turn the tables. With that, he summons several giant serpents that attack the lake creatures. The blonde demon mocks his speed and calls him a filthy farmer. With his wings, he easily cuts through the serpents that try to attack him. The enemy continues to mock, saying the snakes are too slow for him. The winged demon tells him to wait to be slowly defeated by the lake creatures. Then all the leeches gather, forming a giant ball to attack all at once. But suddenly, our hero's snakes emerge and attack the ball of creatures with full force. And with that, all the leeches are completely destroyed in an instant. Our hero had a deadly gaze focused on the winged demon. He then launches one of his serpents towards the demon, and the darn thing barely manages to dodge. Surprised, he wonders why the serpent's speed suddenly increased so much. The lake is now covered with the remains of the eliminated creatures. The protagonist thinks that even though killing so many only got him to the second seal, it's enough. With a wicked smile, he threatens him, saying that in the next blink he'll rip his head off. The winged demon gets furious and grabs his bow, saying the young man is talking nonsense. At that moment, our hero advances at an absurd speed, surprising the enemy. Seeing this, he shouts not to be underestimated and knocks his arrow. He then reveals it's a magic arrow from Lord Shu that fate saved for him to use. With all his strength, he fires the purple magic arrow toward our hero. The winged demon then smiles confidently, believing his victory is already guaranteed. But to his surprise, the protagonist intentionally doesn't dodge the attack. Suddenly, several snakes emerge and wrap around the arrow. But the impact of the attack knocks our boy into the lake. The snakes then begin to swarm around him, forming a huge ball of serpents. And after that, Glon slowly sinks into the lake. Seeing this, the blonde demon is confused and wonders if the deadly arrow managed to finish him off. Suddenly, a pink-haired demoness appears and worriedly asks if her brother is okay. He says everything is fine and that he just dealt with a thief who wanted to steal his things. He then picks up the small bag of treasures and hands it to his sister, saying it's to treat her eyes. Meanwhile, our hero absorbs the arrow's power and wonders why his body is sucking it in. The arrow's power merges with his serpent bloodline, creating a new energy. And upon absorbing all the power, he finally understands what's happening to his body. The purple thunder arrow was a rare sacrificial treasure that floated in his mind. He understands that his body's craving for the treasure triggered his awakening, and he smiles at his serpent's greed. And with that, he awakens the slaughtering power of his ancient serpent bloodline. Thus, he manages to complete his first serpent evolution thanks to the arrow's power. At this, an explosion of purple energy begins to emanate from our boy. On the shore, the two winged demons think the young man has sunk and passed on. The blonde demon then wipes the blood from his face and says they can finally relax. But suddenly, the sky darkens, and a lightning bolt cuts through the darkness. With that, a heavy rain begins to fall. The two siblings then look at the sky, not understanding what's happening. The sky is then covered by dark clouds and purple lightning. The blonde demon recognizes that energy and says it's a wild black thunder. With that, the lake begins to glow with a purple light and bubble intensely. Suddenly, a gigantic explosion of purple energy erupts from the lake with full force. The sister then shields her brother as they are both hit by the explosion's shockwave. The sister says something jumped out of the lightning, leaving her brother completely confused. She then points to a rock in the middle of the lake with a frightened look. There, a mysterious figure stands as a purple lightning bolt strikes it directly. The blonde demon is shocked and can't believe what he's seeing. The figure then reveals itself to be our hero in a new, powerful, and terrifying form. Seeing this, the two siblings are utterly terrified, not knowing what to do. Meanwhile, the sky continues to be cut by more purple lightning and thunder. In his new thunder form, he says he made them wait for his departure. The blonde demon charges furiously, but our hero simply says it was his mistake. In the blink of an eye, our boy dodges, leaving the winged demon surprised to see such speed. However, without wasting time, he lunges at the MC again. The power of the thunder then hits his wing, shattering it into pieces mid-air. He holds the broken wing and thinks this level is too low to test his new abilities. With that, he fires a beam of energy that hits the demon, throwing him into the water. Seeing her brother defeated, the demoness screams in desperation amidst the heavy rain. She starts running worriedly towards her brother. Meanwhile, the blonde demon laments being weak and unable to protect his sister. Worried about her future, he fills with determination and releases a golden energy. With a roar of fury, the winged demon unleashes all his power in an explosion of light. Our hero watches everything with a look of disdain. The blonde demon then reveals his new form, covered in golden feathers and a powerful aura. Seeing this, his sister is moved as he has finally awakened his authority. She then says she won't let him fight alone anymore and prepares her eye power. With that, the demoness summons a giant monstrous beast to fight alongside her brother. The two siblings then shout together and prepare for a devastating combined attack. The demoness fires a shower of golden energy arrows at our hero. The protagonist prepares to attack them and charges full speed at the darn guy. He masterfully dodges all the arrows and lands a direct hit on the winged demon. The blow was so strong it sent him flying. The giant creature then takes advantage of the distraction and tries to devour our hero, but Glon quickly attacks the creature with his serpents, and in the blink of an eye, that giant creature was defeated. Seeing this, the winged demon thinks this is his chance to finally turn the tables. The wretch gathers all his strength and launches a powerful drill-shaped attack toward our protagonist. However, it was nothing for our boy, who defends himself with ease. The sister then uses her reinforcing gaze to strengthen her brother's attack. With that, the beast joins the attack, creating a devastating Cloud Weaver storm. The enemy shouts that this attack cannot be blocked as his hearing is fading, but our hero prepares an even stronger counterattack and says not to be underestimated. He then unleashes his Abyss Storm, which deprives his opponents of their senses. The blonde demon is hit directly and falls into the water, completely defeated by the technique. He hands the treasure to his sister and tells her to run, but the girl refuses to leave him. The blonde demon clutches the bag of treasures tightly amidst the heavy rain. Our hero then approaches and steps on the demon's hand to take the bag back. On impact, the bag opens and several human eyes fall into the water as he begs for them back. He questions how many innocents lost their eyes for a problem a simple healer could have solved. Amidst the rain, one of the human eyes floats in the water in a dramatic close-up. Desperate, the two siblings say they don't want the eyes anymore and beg for mercy. Our hero then turns and says he will ask the two demons a single question. He then asks if the victims begged for mercy when they tore out their eyes. Shocked by the question, the two siblings can't say a single word. With a cold gaze, the protagonist demands a direct yes or no answer. The two demons remain silent, lacking the courage to answer the question. The demoness then simply replies that she doesn't remember any of it. He realizes that even with civilization and emotions, the essence of demons hasn't changed. The protagonist reflects that they just started hurting others for their own benefit. Angrily, he bites the apple and concludes that for them, taking the lives of others is a natural thing. Our hero thinks his new thunder form is the biggest gain he's had so far. However, he realizes the transformation consumes a lot of power and can't be used any time. Elsewhere, some demons find the siblings' bodies and call their boss over to see foul. They discover the two were eliminated by a lightning strike quickly and violently. The leader then appears and says it seems an unwelcome guest has arrived in her territory. Meanwhile, the protagonist watches everything, hidden behind a tree in the forest. The woman then declares she will personally investigate any mysterious cases from now on. Later, we see our hero disguised as a farmer, walking peacefully through the forest. Suddenly, the territory's leader appears before him with a serious and intimidating gaze. She questions him, and he replies that he was looking for some wild berries to plant. The woman then recognizes him as the farm slave who scared off the beast during training. With that, she shoves him, saying she has something more important to do now. The demoness throws him to the ground and steps on him, ordering him to find good berries for a pie. The lucky guy is pinned to the ground, not understanding what was happening. She then leans in and threatens him, saying that if he fails, she'll turn him into a tasty dish. And after she leaves, he realizes that the brief contact was enough to test her power. He discovers she has a level 4 seal, and it's clearly a defensive type, which probably means she has some serious strength. He understands he has the upper hand against heavy hitters, but his chances are slim against defensive types. He then laments not being able to eliminate her, as it would have given a massive boost to his special ability. Besides, the power gap is huge and he doesn't know her weakness, so his chances of winning are next to none. But he can't suppress the urge to hunt her. With a predator's gaze, he decides the hunt for the demoness begins now. Meanwhile, the leader flips through a book, thinking that the talent she's looking for isn't this one. She continues her search and dismisses a demon with electrical powers because the markings don't match. The woman then finds an ability that makes the user stronger with every life they take. She reads the ability's name, Sea of Corpses and Blood, and pauses, lost in thought for a moment. But the leader dismisses the idea, since it's a human ability, not a demonic one. Our hero then devises a plan to get strong enough to take her down in a single strike. Elsewhere, two demons are talking, and one says that if the boss finds out, they're so screwed. The other tells him to chill out, because the place is well hidden and she'll never find out. Meanwhile, a frog was peacefully munching on a bug. And suddenly, our protagonist emerges from the water with a sinister look, staring down the little frog. He then gives the little guy a pat and says he's going to use this place to power up without any hassle. After a while, the young man arrives at a cave that serves as the entrance to the secret hideout. Inside, a guard stops him and demands a token to let him into the black market. With that, our hero enters the illegal market, which was packed with demons of all kinds, and inside he was ready to explore the place. Nearby, some monsters grumble that everything is secret now. It used to be so much easier back in the day. A vendor tries to sell some super rare steel, but our hero doesn't seem too interested in it. The vendor shows off the material, but our guy says it's useless since no one can even forge that steel. In another corner, the hero spots some heart potions and thinks the trip wasn't a waste after all. The monsters wonder why the boss banned human trafficking 2 years ago. Hearing that, the young man finds it all very strange and suspects the leader is up to something. A vendor announces new slaves, but a monster realizes they were the ones the blonde demon wanted. The vendor tries to calm the crowd and promises a good price while our hero watches everything unfold. The protagonist approaches and tells the vendor he'll take all the slaves off his hands. Seeing this, the red demon scoffs at him and asks if he has the money to pay for them all. With that, our guy offers the thunder arrow as payment, and the vendor is stunned by the proposal. The vendor then orders his goons to take the slaves outside while he discusses the details. One of the monsters yanks a little boy who was blindfolded and had his hands tied. In the process, the boy trips and falls flat on the ground, dropping something from his hand. Desperate, the boy tries to find what he dropped, but the demon yells at him to hurry up. Then the demon yanks the rope, making the poor boy tumble again. Seeing the slaves, a green demon complains that he wanted to have some fun with the girl who was there. The vendor asks our guy if he's in a hurry, and he confirms that he needs to sell the item quickly. With a wicked smile, the demon accepts the trade and closes the door to finalize the deal. The large wooden door shuts completely, leaving the two of them alone inside. Suddenly, the door bursts into splinters, and the vendor is caught completely off guard by our protagonist's power. The demon then screams in desperation as he's devoured by the snakes. With that, the door slams shut and the floor is covered in blood. A moment later, the door slowly creaks open, and Glon finally steps out, leaving a total bloodbath behind him. Meanwhile, the green demon leads the slaves away, telling them to keep quiet. He then threatens them, saying he'll rip out their tongues and roast them. But in the blink of an eye, our hero appears and attacks him, blasting the creep's head clean off. With that, he finally feels like he has a power of his own, but his abilities counter has been reset. Seeing this, one of the female slaves starts crying in fear, terrified by our protagonist's power. And upon seeing the green demon's body, she calls Glon a demon among demons. He then thinks to himself that his special ability with negative side effects didn't activate this time. Glon then turns to the two children he saved from the market. The protagonist then returns the object the boy dropped, asking if it belongs to him. The little boy confirms it's his and holds it dearly in his hands. Glon then tells everyone to follow him, but the blonde-haired girl points to the rope and asks if the protagonist is going to pull them along. At that, he says he doesn't like seeing people on leashes and frees them from their bonds. Back at the hideout, we see the wooden figurines of his friends, along with the little frog. The protagonist heals the slaves, and one of the rescued men celebrates being able to see again, but another scolds him for his lack of respect. Next, he heals the little boy's eyes, who thanks him, overjoyed. The blonde girl then asks why he saved them, and Glon says it was because he felt like it. The little girl is completely baffled by his answer, but the protagonist just tells her to be quiet because he's busy at the moment. Lost in thought, he wonders how he should get rid of all of them. No one dares to say a single word, and even after some time, the silence in the cave continues. Seeing the strange mood, the little girl thinks the situation is super awkward. Suddenly, she has a brilliant idea to solve the problem. She offers to tell everyone a joke. The girl then tells a joke about a festival where the third drink was half price. So a man walked into the bar and ordered a glass of the second drink to take advantage of the special offer. Hearing that, the other rescued people start sweating bullets, not getting the punchline at all. With that, an awkward silence fills the room. But suddenly, the protagonist lets out a small chuckle. The girl then cries tears of joy and runs to hug him, thrilled to finally be understood. However, the protagonist uses his ability, and she screams in terror. Seeing the snake in front of her, the serpent then attacks the other rescued people, who scream, not understanding what's happening. Then, one of the men calls out to his savior. The protagonist just watches them with a cold gaze and calls them naive. The man then says that the demon race can never be trusted, as they always hide a venomous heart. But Glon says this is a lesson about trusting demons, and now they'll learn the hard way. With that, all the rescued people fall to the ground, defeated by the serpent's venom. The protagonist turns to the little blonde girl with a sinister look and asks why she's resisting the poison, and she yells, saying he didn't want to take their lives, that he only meant to knock them out. Realizing he's been found out, the protagonist's expression turns serious. She continues, saying he just wanted to teach them a lesson, and Glon asks why she's so sure. With tears in her eyes, the girl says it's because he's a good demon, and that's why she trusts him. Seeing the little boy passed out on the ground, the protagonist asks her what she wants now. The little girl then says she wants to follow him, but he rejects her, saying he doesn't need any dead weight. With a smile, she says she's a blacksmith and introduces herself as Sulla, asking for his name. Upon hearing the name, our hero is surprised and asks if she's the granddaughter of a man named Alexius. The girl confirms it and asks if he knows her grandfather. He replies that they go way back and that he even held her in his arms when she was a baby. With that, we see a flashback of an old blacksmith's workshop. There, Alexius says he doesn't forge swords for those who harm their own kind or take innocent lives. The blacksmith then glares at our protagonist and says that he reeks of the blood of innocents and his own people. He then kicks him out, but the young man says Sister Dia sent him there because he's forging a sword from Angsi steel. The blacksmith then asks if he's talking about Sister Dia from the sect of Mercy. The blacksmith then asks if he's with her, and Glon confirms it. Alexius looks at him with a serious face and gives in, saying he'll repay a debt he owes her with this sword. He then shows a statue that Sister Dia gave him and says he'll use it in the sword's hilt. Blon asks when he can pick up the sword, and the blacksmith tells him to be patient as it will take a few days because his daughter-in-law is about to have a baby and he needs to find a scholar. Days later, our protagonist returns to get the sword and finds the workshop completely destroyed. He gets closer and notices Alexius is holding a baby and asks where his sword is. The blacksmith points to the sword beside him and tells him to get it himself. Alexius reveals that the sword's name is Sulla, which is also his granddaughter's name. The protagonist then asks what happened to the little girl's parents. He replies that they passed away and that a pack of demons attacked the village, and they took out everyone they saw. Glon is surprised to learn these monsters are called the demon race, and the blacksmith asks if his friends were also taken out by them. With a pained expression, he thinks that everyone he loved was gone because of that cursed demon race. Alexius then laments that the small child never had the chance to receive her birth blessing. With a determined look, our hero faces the little girl and decides to do something. He says he will give her his own blessing so that her life may be free from suffering. He then finishes the blessing, saying that her name will accompany him on his journey of slaughter and vengeance. Seeing the horde of demons, the blacksmith says that with his new attitude, he no longer needs the Statue of Mercy. Without a word, our hero grabs the sword and prepares to face the horde of monsters. He then wonders about the meaning of mercy, because healing the wounded is just a way to fool yourself without actually solving the problem. The hero then readies himself to face them, vowing that he will end his enemies before they can even raise their blades. And with a single powerful strike, he eliminates a huge number of demons at once. He shows not an ounce of mercy towards his enemies, and cuts down every demon that dares to cross his path of vengeance. He doesn't stop attacking for even a second, and keeps fighting until the bodies of his enemies pile up and form a mountain. With his face covered in blood and a look of pure fury, he continues his rampage. To him, true mercy is annihilating every last one of his enemies. If you want the next part, leave lots of likes and comments down below, and don't forget to hype the video, it'll help a lot.